What's happening, everybody? Texas loses one of their key pieces on offense. What does it mean for their title chances? Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download Game Time, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, we're going to dive right into it as one of the biggest stories to hit one of the new SEC teams coming out this week, as Texas losing their sophomore running back CJ Baxter to a knee injury in practice on Tuesday. Sounded like it was pretty serious, but we didn't know the severity. Now we do. On Wednesday, it comes out that he will indeed miss the season. An MRI revealing his lateral and posterior collateral ligaments are obviously damaged, and he will miss this season. And join us now to talk all about it, there's our buddy Justin Nash. He's at NashTalksTexas all over the social media and YouTube, and covering the Longhorns a long time. If you're watching the video, you see all of his Longhorn jerseys hanging up in his studio. Justin, welcome in, man, and let's dive into this. What does this mean for Texas? I guess, first off, how discouraging is this if you're a Texas fan?
I mean, I think that Texas ultimately will be okay at the end of the day when you're looking at all this stuff, but it's just losing a back like CJ Baxter. That's always going to sting. There's no way to avoid it. There's no way to go about it. You look at last year, I think there's no other way to say it than last year he started over Jonathan Brooks, and we all know how good Jonathan Brooks was this last year. So that means the coaching staff had to have seen something in CJ Baxter for him to start game one over Brooks. But it's just kind of he left the game versus Rice, left the game versus Alabama, missed Wyoming, left the game early versus Texas Tech, and then now this. It's an unfortunate series of events, and you just got to hope that he gets healthy and can bounce back from this 100%.
Yeah, what's crazy is, Jonathan Brooks, the guy who ends up, becoming the starter last year and rushes for over 1,000 yards, he gets hurt at the end of last season, and they had to lean on CJ Baxter and Jaydon Blue in some of the most important games of the season, including the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma State, and then, of course, the playoff game against Washington. And I think most people saw both those guys perform so well. I think we all just kind of assumed Baxter was going to be the starter this year, but this was going to be a two-horse, workhorse backfield anyway. They were going to lean on both these guys. So at least the good news is here that Jaydon Blue's been a guy who's played a good bit and, maybe ready to take those reins.
Yeah, I think really what this does, I mean, they were going to get some run no matter what. I still think that I'm a massive Jaydon Blue guy. I still think that Cedric Baxter was going to be running back number one, and then you got Jaydon Blue at two, and it might have been 1A, 1B type deal. But really, we're going to lose some really solid pass protection. Watching his film, if you go back and you watch his plays, I probably can't count on one hand. I can't use all my fingers to count the amount of times that he's been beaten. And protect when he's has a linebacker coming up and trying to smack him in the face, he meets the guy and he's up to the challenge. Yeah, Jaydon Blue. I mean, ultimately, what this is going to do is Jaydon Blue is probably going to get most of what CJ Baxter is leaving off his plate, and then you're going to have Trey Wisner come and clean up the rest of that, and then maybe I think the wild card here is Jarrett Gibson. Really talented running back that came in this last class. And he's going to have all the opportunity now for these short yardage games.
Yeah, and for those keeping track, Jarrett Gibson, I think ESPN had him as the number 2 running back in the country, depending on what service you were looking at. But Trey Wisner was, sophomore running back and played all 14 games last year. A good bit on special teams, but yeah, I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to be fine with Jaydon Blue, but you really need to know what else you have, because as we know, these days college football, you can't get by just riding one guy. Nobody really rides the one workhorse much. Most teams are either running back by committee or at least 50-50 splitting carries with somebody else. So as good as Blue is, like to your point, somebody else is going to have to step up behind him.
Well, and it's when you look at Blue too, he's a 6 foot, 200-pound running back. And that's not saying he's small. He's not, he's a good size, but that's not the size of a bell cow back that you want to just pound and pound and pound and pound. I think a good news for Longhorn fans is you've heard, and this was a deal where I think that this is best that it happened kind of organically, rather than being forced in a situation where we're at now and we're starting to hear, oh yeah, well, don't worry, Trey Weiser's been doing really good behind the scenes. Well, we've been hearing ever since the spring that Trey Wisner has been impressing Chashard Choice and the rest of the coaches. And so that is one source of positivity that Texas fans can lean upon. But I think ultimately Steve Sarkisian, what he's done is he's done a very good job at balancing the recruiting and getting depth at all positions. And this is one example of, I don't think losing Baxter is going to make or break the season, but it is something that we will feel, because he is, anytime you lose a back of this caliber, I mean, he's a guy on the Doak Walker Award list.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point was, I mean, the timing of this sucks because I think both guys were named to the Doak Walker Award watch list in Blue and Baxter. And you think about the history of it from, Ricky Williams to Cedric Benson, Deontay Foreman, and most recently Bijan Robinson. I mean, there have been some legendary Longhorn backs to win that award. And, here you are with, two guys that you thought were going to have a good candidacy. And now it's kind of on Blue. And hey, can he be the guy? And to your point, we're going to find out very quickly. Let me ask you this, Nash. Last kind of question here is, what does this do in your mind for Texas's title chances? I mean, does this, is it in your mind, do you deduce or take the win total down a little bit at all? Does this do anything big picture, or is it kind of a wait and see? You get Colorado State a good tune-up in week 1, and you got to go to Michigan. And if you can't run the football, in Michigan, you're going to find out you got big problems. But what do you think this does kind of big picture overall for Texas?
That's one thing that I've been kind of thinking about all day. And I don't think it's going to matter too much, because I think if Texas wants to get where we want to go, that really wasn't going to come down to CJ Baxter or the running backs or anything like that. That's going to come down to Quinn Ewers, number 3. And if he's able to progress and really take that next leap and have the Heisman finalist season that we think he's potentially capable of having, this is really going to show up, it's going to put a magnifying glass, I think, on Quinn Ewers' leadership and his ability to lead the football team. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to really put a dent too much in Texas football chances for winning the national title. Meaning, if we're not in the national title conversation, I don't think Cedric Baxter being on the playing this year, he's on the team, but I don't think him playing this year would have really changed that as much. Ironically, I actually think to the Doak Walker thing, I think that this actually makes our chances of having a Texas Longhorn running back and winning the Doak Walker Award a little bit better, because now we're going to funnel more carries and more targets into one running back, as opposed to you had a true two-headed monster that they could eat each other. They could have eaten each other's carries. The timing is impeccable, because I was literally about to write an article today on the on how Steve Sarkisian might have to miss out on this might be his first season without a 1,000-yard running back, but I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. I do think that Jaydon Blue is going to be able to take most of the load. This dude is I think he's a superstar that people that college football is kind of waiting to find out about. He's a guy that really got screwed over in the recruiting game because he had, whatever reason it was, whether there was an issues with his teams or whatever, he wasn't playing football his last year of the season. And I understand recruiting services saying, hey, we kind of got to, put him down a little bit. But they dropped him from being, I think, the top running back in the class to down to 25 or something like that. And it was just, didn't make a lot of sense. We ended up getting him, and he's as talented as ever. He breaks off 10-yard, 15-yard runs just the same as Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Brooks did. So I'm excited to see what he would do in a full workload.
Nash, great stuff as always, man. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff.
I appreciate it. Yeah, just like you said, Nash Talks Texas, trying to make it easy for everybody to find it. If you want to find Texas football, like the Texas football games, that's kind of something that I do, especially Texas clips on YouTube. But yeah, Nash Talks Texas on YouTube and Twitter. If you're not a Texas fan, you might not like my Twitter feed, but it's entertaining at least a little bit.
Well, you're part of the SEC now, so everybody's got to be scouting out the opposition and see what Texas got going on. Nash, appreciate the time, man. We'll do it again soon. All right.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right, that's our buddy Nash of Nash Talks Texas. Check out his stuff. Does a great job talking to all things Texas Longhorns. As we continue on here, we do need to talk about one of the other big stories that popped up in the SEC, and this came out earlier this week, that injury reports are likely coming to the conference this season. On Tuesday, Alex Scarborough and John Talty of CBS Sports reporting that the conference is moving toward a mandatory injury report. The move is not yet officially approved, but details are reportedly close to being finalized ahead of college football week 1. Of course, with the increasing legal sports betting in the United States legalized, there have been pushes for mandatory injury reports in college sports. Why? Well, there's a lot of stuff that could get really sticky. Let's just say, for instance, Jalen Milroe is not practicing during the LSU week. Well, a big money booster could see that and could go make a big money bet on LSU minus the points or plus the points or whatever. So there's little things like that could really make this thing sketchy. Maybe one of those sleazy guys from Vegas gets over and slips Milroe, a couple $100 and says, hey, tweet out, I'm excited for the game this week, knowing he's not going to play. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of some hypotheticals here that could really make this thing sketchy. But what's wrong with transparency? That's the big thing. The Big Ten, they started doing it. They designated a team's injured players as questionable or out. I think it's very simple. Of course, this topic came up at the SEC meetings in May. Greg Sankey indicated the conference was actively considering injury reports. It said members of his staff have been working on that project since last summer. Now, if you recall, in September, Nick Saban expressed reservations over it, said it could create a disadvantage by revealing a player's status. And to that I say, tough. I mean, deal with it. I mean, is it really going to make that big of a difference if the opposing team knows that your third-string wide receiver is questionable for this weekend? Obviously, it matters for the big-name players, but doesn't it matter for the fans, too? If I'm an Alabama fan, I'm paying premium dollars to see them play a big opponent this weekend, and suddenly I find out Jalen Milroe's not going. I mean, I hate to say it, but if I'm paying premium dollars, I want to see the stars. I want to see the big name players. So anyway, we'll see what happens here, but it does sound like we are moving towards that injury report happening in the SEC, and more power to it. Appreciate Greg Sankey and the folks making it happen. One other note, over at Tennessee, they picked up a 4-star tight end, Carson Snead, on Monday evening. Comes the second commitment for their class of 2026. So good on them. And then meanwhile, over at University of Texas, they picked up a commit in 4-star or 5-star wide receiver, Kalik Lockett, 6'2", 180 pounds from the state of Texas. Chose the Longhorns over LSU and Alabama. So good on them. So there you have it. You're caught up on all the latest news going on around the conference. All right, when we return here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day, we are going to talk with JD Pickell of On3 Sports. We'll get his thoughts on the SEC this upcoming season. But first, I'll remind you guys, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at the Game Time app. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. They got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time is going to take the guesswork out of buying tickets for Major League Baseball games, college football, whatever it is you want to get into. They are going to take care of it for you. And, of course, flash deals. You save even more with the exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. The zone deals, you just pick a section, let Game Time choose the seats for you. You can save money that way. Also, the all-in pricing feature, that's my favorite. It shows you the total upfront. No surprise fees at checkout. Bing, bang, boom. You hit the button, and you're ready to go. You got your tickets. And, of course, the seat views. Everybody wants to know How bad is this view going to be? How good is the view going to be? You want to make sure you see it from your panoramic view in the app from your seat before you buy. Just download the Game Time app today, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Again, if you've never signed up before, terms apply. Create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off. Download Game Time today. It is last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Run along from SEC Media Days, and always fun when we can catch up with one of our guys on the national side of things, JD Pickell from On3 Sports. JD, what's up, man?
This is crazy. Like it's like we talk so much about the 2024 season, and it's going to get here eventually, and now it's like, all right, we are legitimately getting it rolling. I love it, man. This is awesome to be on with you.
I love it. What do you make of the additions of Texas and Oklahoma here? I mean, it's a little weird. I mean, we're in Dallas, Texas, of all places. It was previously just A&M, but now here we are, 2 schools from the state of Texas and SEC Media Days in Texas. It's still surreal.
It's a little bit eerie. It's one of those things that I said it on our show. It feels like Texas and Oklahoma were like that engaged couple to the SEC. Like for a long time, I've just always thought of them as being married. But now, like we're at the wedding, and they're here till death do us part, and or at least till the next round of realignment and something shakes up. But no, this is a blast, and I think from a fan base level, with how crazed both of those operations are, they're going to fit like a glove. I think the fact that Texas is coming in after last season, all their success is going to make for a lot more fun for guys like us to talk about. And Oklahoma, with Brent Venables running the show and all the talent they have on that roster, can't count them out. So it's going to be a lot of fun, man. It's going to be a lot of storylines, and I'm fired up for it, man. It's here.
Give me your kind of pecking order at the top of the SEC. Who are your 3-4 teams you think have a chance to get to Atlanta and play for the title?
You know, it's funny. Ole Miss has better odds to make the college football playoff than Alabama. I don't know when the last time, if ever, that's happened, which if you told me that a year ago, I'd be like, what happened to Nick Saban?
Right.
I think you got to put Georgia at 1. I just feel the best about their roster. I feel the best about their head coach, their quarterback. I'm going to go ahead and put Texas at 2 for the same reasons. A lot of newness in that wide receiver room, so we'll see how that translates. But Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian, I think their best is still ahead of them. I'm going to go ahead and put Ole Miss at 3. So I'll stick with Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin and the way they attacked the portal. They kind of got some toughness to them that I don't know they've had since Lane Kiffin's been there on the defensive side of the ball.
Right.
And then I'll put Alabama at 4. I think Jalen Milroe and Kalen DeBoer is going to be a match made in heaven. If someone's watching this and saying, put Alabama at 3, I don't have a ton of pushback against that. So I think it's Georgia, Texas. I'll put Ole Miss at 3 for now until I see the Kalen DeBoer defense, but I'll put them at 4 with Bama.
I think that's going to be fascinating. Is like I always said, whoever replaces Nick Saban, I mean, the job is going to be super tough and difficult, and you will not live up to Alabama fans' expectations. But, I mean, he's had this run of Michael Penix for so many years. Like, what does Kalen DeBoer look like with a new quarterback? And, you know, Milroe had his ups. He had his downs last year. We forget about the downs because of how things finished. But I don't know, man. That to me is one of the most intriguing storylines, because what if – and they got a tough schedule too.
Yeah.
Last time they went to LSU and to Tennessee, Nick Saban was the coach, and they lost both those games. So they got to do that this year in year 1 for Kalen DeBoer in the SEC. Man, I mean, what happens if Bama loses 3-4 games this year?
Yeah, I think we understand there will be an overreaction. There will be is he the right guy for the job? Is he cut out for the SEC? And I think year 1 we kind of have to take with a grain of salt. On one hand, you say, okay, Nick Saban kind of did leave the cupboard stocked for him from a talent perspective. Like, he has guys to go make the college football playoff this year. At the same time, look at the defensive side of the ball. There's a lot of young bucks. There's a lot of dudes that have not played a lot of college football that are going to be asked to contribute in a big way. And so if they lose 3 games this year, I don't think I panic. I think a lot of it will come back to, okay, well, how did those 3 losses look? Were they last-second losses where Brian Kelly goes for 2 and, you know, they end up winning the game in that fashion again? Or, you know, were they getting blown out by a Tennessee? Did Tennessee just go out there and run roughshod over them? So the eye test is going to be crucial, but I do think with the way they're recruiting right now, with the way that he has had a track record of success everywhere he's been, he's 104-12 as a head coach. I think they're going to be okay long term. I think the crucial thing you just spoke to, can we get past year 1 and stomach whatever this undefined version of Alabama is going to be in Kalen DeBoer's first year?
We're here at SEC Media Days, and a question I've had a lot of people ask me is, you know, who's a team that could maybe sneak up on some people? And the team I keep going back to is, what is Texas A&M going to be? I mean, I like Mike Elko. He's kind of brought that blue-collar mentality back to College Station in the wake of Jimbo Fisher. And I don't know, man. Like, you know, they're going to have a hard-nosed defense with him as the coach. if the offense and Connor Wegman and Colin Klein coaching them up, if they can click a little bit, Noah Thomas emerges as a number one receiver, like A&M could be playing spoiler here on a couple teams.
100%. Like I'm with you. I don't know if you pick them to win the conference, but I think year one for Mike Elko at A&M is a lot about let's lay the foundation, let's figure out who we are. Because to me it feels like, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts here, I don't know there's quite as much structure at A&M as maybe they have needed, just from the outside looking in, and I think Mike Elko brings that. So can we solidify structure? And then if we get that on, pretty quickly, like you mentioned, there's a lot of pieces to go win some football games. So I think they're one to watch. In the same vein, I think Auburn is a team that is fascinating this year. Peyton Thorne gets all of spring football. They hit the portal hard. Hugh Freeze had his worst season statistically calling the offense ever last year. Now he's taken over the reins, it sounds like. I'm excited to watch Auburn. I don't know if they're going to win the SEC, but they're one of those teams that could definitely play spoiler.
The other two, I think, that are wild cards, LSU and Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like, if Garrett Nussmeier is the truth, or if Nico Iamaleava, and I think I got that right.
That was money. Hey, that was big time right there, baby. It's media days.
If both those guys click, I mean, they could be in that 10-2 territory and getting into the playoff.
And what does LSU's defense look like is another question. I mean, I feel pretty confident that Garrett Nussmeier will be a success. Now, is he winning the Heisman Trophy like Jaden Daniels did last year? Probably asking for a lot, but I think the trade-off is how much does the offense take a step back, and then how much does the defense take a step forward? Because if LSU, I was flipping through stats the other day of like total defense. I had to get to the third page to find LSU. I don't know the last time LSU was a third-page defense, but if they can get to that second page, maybe, middle of the second page, they could be in good shape.
JD, it was historically bad.
It was unbelievable.
Like if they had even just a mediocre LSU defense last year, they're probably beating Bama and Tuscaloosa. It was insane how bad it was.
It was uncharacteristic. It felt. I think every college football fan even felt a little bit like a little bit sick. You don't recognize it. You're not used to seeing LSU not play defense. So, and I'm with you. And the thing with Nico too, I think something that gets talked about with him. Obviously, all the physical tools, and we had him as the number one player in 2023. Just period. Everything that you hear about him is how mature he is, how well he's handled the spotlight and the pressure, and I think that's crucial for him hitting the ground running early in his career in Knoxville. And if he's able to, kind of have the game slow down for him, as we see with first starting quarterbacks not get overwhelmed, he's going to be special. So yeah, I'm with you. They could be one of those teams that pops and makes college football playoff berth for sure.
Who is set for a disappointing year? And obviously we could say Vanderbilt, but I look at Arkansas and say, I like Taylor Green. I like the Bobby Petrino addition. But, here's the problem. Everybody wants expansion. And I say, great. SEC should add Wake Forest and Indiana. No, you want to add Texas and Oklahoma. Not everybody can be good. Somebody has to suck.
Somebody has to take a back seat when you bring in two big-timers. But I'm with you. I think one school that I'm really curious about is Missouri. Yeah. Because last year they won 4 games by 1 score. And they had a phenomenal season. Beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, won double-digit ball games. Cody Schrader just scored again against Tennessee, I'm pretty sure. But they lose Cody Schrader. They lose their DC. They lose a lot on defense production-wise. I think they're a good football team. Are they a 10-win football team again? Can they recreate that magic of that many one-score wins? I have a harder time getting on board with that. But even with the playmakers, that could kind of be the end-all, be-all. So I like Missouri. I don't know if I like them as much as maybe Vegas likes them, if that makes sense.
Talk with JD Pickell of On 3. What do you guys got working on 3? Every day I look up, you've got some listing that's pissing everybody off, and everybody's like, this guy doesn't know ball. I love that line. But what do you guys got working?
I can't take too much credit for the list. Jesse Simonton is a national columnist for us, and he does a phenomenal job, and he just leans into all the whenever you make a list, you're already wrong.
Right, exactly.
It's a losing game. And list. So, credit to him for just stepping up to the plate every time. And I personally agree with a lot of his list for what it's worth.
So you just react to his list and you get killed by people on social media.
It's just, it's a losing game for sure. But that's what we get, being here and doing college football in July. But, we're going to be right across the way from y'all here throughout the day. I know Andy Staples is going live every morning here for Media Days, and we'll be doing our show Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So it should be a fun week, man. again, it feels like we're actually getting into the season now that this day has arrived. So I'm fired up.
I kind of feel like with the headsets and us sitting next to each other, you're a former player. Like, we're almost like I could do play-by-play, you could do color. We just call a game.
Hey, let's
do that.
Anybody who's watching this that's got a game going on, let us know. Let's make something shake.
Maybe throughout the week, what we do is we set up the PlayStation with NCAA football, and you and I just call the action on that. I think we can make that happen.
What's your plan for that? Did you bring a system? Are you?
So here's the deal.
What's
I
your deal
pre-ordered
here?
it. I already got the pre-download. I left it at home. I said, this week I got to work.
Okay.
I cannot touch it. I know our guy John Neighbors over there. He's going to have the system going. I cannot. I got to be focused on this. We'll visit it later in the week when we get done here.
That's a very Saban-esque approach by you. We're keeping the main thing the main thing.
We're very focused. All right. Gotta stay focused this week.
I love that.
JD, always appreciate the time. Man.
Appreciate
Thanks so much.
you, man. It's phenomenal.
All right. Thanks again to JD Pickell for joining us. Of course, appreciate Nash Talks Texas joining us as well. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And hey, for your second listen, check out Locked On College Football podcast with Spencer McLaughlin, getting you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. Discussion on the upcoming season, ever-changing landscape of college athletics, conference realignment, transfer portal, NIL. He's talking all of it over there on Locked On College Football, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Come on back and see us.